Yo, what's going on, guys? It is KevDog here doing another graphics comparison from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. This time we're doing Fortnite, and Switch Fortnite came out many years ago, and the graphics have never really gotten much better, but on the Switch 2, it's a whole other story. For this comparison video, I'm doing a game of Reload on the Oasis map, and one of the first things you guys are going to notice are the trees loading in. The trees on the normal Switch version of Fortnite have never really looked that good. Sometimes it'll load in very slowly, like what it's doing right now. I literally made it to the point where I'm landed on the ground, and not only the grass textures have not loaded in, but the trees haven't either. On the Switch 2, it loads in the trees pretty well with no issues, and the overall frame rate you guys are probably already noticing. The frame rate is much higher on Switch 2. It is locked at 30 FPS on the original Switch. Not good. I tried to make this comparison as accurate as possible, so I'm doing a game of Reload on both Switches. They're both on the same map, and I'm using the same skin, pickaxe combo, all that stuff. I did 2 games in total, and on the first Switch, I'm using the normal Pro controller, and on Switch 2, I'm using the new Switch 2 Pro controller. There's not much of a difference in that. The controller is way more comfortable, but you guys can probably already see how much smoother this game is on Switch 2. Both of these games, I pretty much had just bot lobbies. I ran into some real people, but it was far from many. I don't know why. Both of these lobbies were just absolutely infested with bots. But one of the first things I wanted to talk about was how well does the Switch 2 actually compare with other consoles? I mainly play Fortnite almost exclusively on Xbox Series S, and I will say I'm definitely going to still be playing on the Series S. The game does run a lot better now than it did on Switch, don't get me wrong, but the Series S version definitely runs the game much better than Switch 2 does. I've also played plenty of hours on PS5, and that's definitely better than the Switch 2 as well, but if you were to compare the Switch 2 to PS4 and Xbox One, Switch 2 wins. I think the fact that it's portable is a pretty big plus, but playing the Switch in Joy-Con mode with handheld is pretty difficult for me. I only like playing it on Switch 2 if I'm using the Pro controller. Handheld mode is just not something I think I could ever get used to. I know there's a lot of people that actually prefer to use handheld mode. That's cool, it's just not for me. It was really hard to tell when I was playing if the Switch 2 is actually having a bunch of little lag moments, or if that's just how it was looking through my recording software. Now that I'm actually watching the video footage back, it seems to look better than it did while I was actually playing, so that's good. The Switch 2 on the left, as I'm in this gunfight, it is clearly stuttering. There are entire frames that just go missing. Now, another thing worth mentioning is when you actually first launch up Fortnite, it's going to load a lot faster than it did on the normal Switch. On the Switch 1, even just being in the main menus of the game, like the lobby, going to the item shop, your locker, lagged like crazy. That doesn't really happen anymore. Also, keep in mind, while Fortnite does look a lot better now on Switch 2, it is still not in 4K resolution. There are a lot of Switch 2 games that can run in 4K, but Fortnite, at least right now, is not one of them. Also, unfortunately, every Fortnite mode is available except for Save the World. I used to play Save the World all the time on PC, PS5, Xbox. I don't really know why it's not on Switch 2. I guess they just don't want to keep updating it. It's kind of one of those modes that Fortnite for some reason has neglected for a long time. The same updates come out every year for stuff like Winter. I don't know. They also ended the daily login reward bonuses for stuff like V-Bucks a long time ago. I don't know. It's just been getting progressively worse and worse over time, and you are not going to be able to play Save the World on Switch 2. Also, if you guys get a Switch 2 and you're setting up your system and you do what's called a system transfer, it's going to transfer over the Switch 1 version of Fortnite, which you don't actually need anymore. If you try to boot up the Switch 1 version of Fortnite on the home menu, it'll show Peely, and then it's going to say that you don't need this anymore and you have to download the Switch 2 version of the game. That was one mistake I made. It was kind of confusing because on the home menu, it actually showed Fortnite twice. One option just said Fortnite, the other said Fortnite for Nintendo Switch, and the one saying for Nintendo Switch is the one that you can safely delete on Switch 2. If you guys are playing on Switch 2 and you used a normal Pro controller on the Switch 1 version of the game, you can still do that, so don't worry. You're not going to be forced to buy the Switch 2 Pro controller. You can keep using your old one and even your old Joy-Cons wirelessly. Something else that I heard is possible is using mouse mode, where you use the Joy-Cons as mice, but I wasn't able to actually get that working yet. If you guys can get that working though, then this would actually make it feel kind of like you're playing on PC on the Switch 2. Also, after you guys download Fortnite on Switch 2 and play your first match, once you make it back to the lobby, you will see you'll be given a free emote just because you played on Switch 2. If you're playing on PC, mobile, PS5, any other system, there's not actually going to be a way for you to get this emote. You have to be on Switch 2 to get it. It's not like a crazy catchy dance or anything like that. It's not really that cool of an emote, but it's still good to have. It'll make your account that much more valuable. But also, as you guys can probably tell, the textures on the mountains, the overall terrain, the grass, it looks a lot better now. It looks more in line like how it looks on something like a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or S. Overall, I'm very happy with this update that Fortnite came out with for Switch 2, and of course, it's a free game, so you don't need to pay for this update. There are some games on Switch 2 where if you want to upgrade the game to make it better on Switch 2, you're gonna have to pay, and Fortnite, no, it's not one of those games. Once you boot up your Switch and you transfer over Fortnite from a different Switch, it'll put the new Switch 2 version of Fortnite on the home menu for you. If you bought a Switch 2 though, and you don't have a Switch 1 or something like a Switch Lite, you're gonna have to go on the eShop, search up Fortnite, and get it downloaded. Even though both of my games were completely full of bots, I was able to end up getting 2 games in a row, which were actually both wins, so I'm happy about that. I hope you guys enjoyed the rest of this gameplay. The video's not over yet, but that's it for my actual verbal comparisons I can make. I'm pretty happy with Fortnite on Switch 2, and watching this video back, I don't actually see the stuttering that I saw while recording, so that's good. I was honestly kind of worried at first. I was thinking, is this game actually freezing this much on the day it just came out? But no, that's not the case. You're good. Enjoy, subscribe if you're new. I don't really make Fortnite videos. I mainly just make Pokemon and Switch videos for Nintendo, but if you enjoyed, subscribe. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. Enjoy the rest of the video.